So, a warm welcome, guys. Next, we are going to see about the Epstein-Barr virus, okay, a DNA virus. The synopsis will be MCQs, and the next we'll continue with the Epstein-Barr virus. The MCQs will be based upon my last two videos, that is herpes simplex virus and varicella zoster virus. The answers you can comment in the comment section. Okay, now we'll have go through MCQs. The most common cause of sporadic encephalitis is either HSV1, HSV2, or HHV3 or HHV6. The next is the most common cause of HSV urethritis is HSV1 or HSV2. The next is a 48-year-old woman develops fever and focal neurological signs. Listen to this question carefully. An MRI shows a left temporal lobe lesion, and the most appropriate test that can be done to confirm the diagnosis of HSV encephalitis in this patient is either brain biopsy or Zank smear or PCR assay for viral DNA in CSF or serum IgM antibody detection. The next MCQ is, what is true about HSV2? Either most common site of latency, trigeminal neuron, most common site of lesion around mouth, most common mode of transmission is through contact, or most common age affected is adults. Fifth question is, what is the incubation period of varicella infection? 10 to 15 days, 3 to 4 days, 10 to 21 days, 7 to 10 days. And the shingles is caused by either HSV1, HSV2, HSV3 or HSV4. And the seventh one is most frequently affected dermatome in herpes zoster infection is either T3 to L3 or L3 to S3 or T4 to L4 or T2 to L2. And the zoster infection without skin lesion is known as zoster ophthalmicus or zoster sign herpetica or Ramsay-Hunt syndrome or shingles. Which of the following is recommended for post-exposure prophylaxis of varicella zoster virus infection? Either live attenuated vaccine or acyclovir therapy or famciclovir or varicella zoster immunoglobulin. And the last question is, the primary infection of varicella zoster infection is transmitted through either sexual contact or venereal mode or respiratory route or direct contact. That's all, guys, and we'll continue with our next virus, that is Epstein-Barr virus. So, an intro to the Epstein-Barr virus. As we have clearly discussed in the classification of human herpes viridae family, the Epstein-Barr virus belongs to human herpes virus 4, type 4, that is HHV4. Okay, and it belongs to the gamma viridae subfamily. Okay, and this Epstein-Barr virus is a causative agent of infectious mononucleosis. This disease you call it as kissing disease, and it causes glandular fever. தமிழ்ல சொல்லணும் அப்படின்னா சுரப்பி காய்ச்சல் அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க இந்த glandular fever. Okay, and EBV associated malignancies, it causes some malignancies. Those include nasopharyngeal carcinoma, Burkitt's lymphoma, Hodgkin lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, oral hairy leukoplakia. This is a picture, okay, depicting oral hairy leukoplakia. That is nothing but a white patch present in the tongue. Okay, and Duncan syndrome. This Duncan syndrome is nothing but a X-linked lymphoproliferative syndrome. Okay, and it also causes tonsillar carcinoma. Now, coming to the antigens of your Epstein-Barr virus, there are actually three antigens: latent phase antigens, early antigens, and late antigens. We'll come to the latent phase antigens. First, we'll see early and late antigens. What are these antigens? Antigens are generally proteins. So, if I call it as early proteins, these proteins are non-structural proteins and they are responsible for replication. Whereas, if you take the late proteins, these late proteins are structural proteins and they are responsible for formation of the viral capsid and envelope. So those are the early antigens and late antigens. Coming to latent phase antigens, they are synthesized during latency, as the name prescribes. And the example of these antigens, latent phase antigens, include EBNA and LMP. What is this EBNA? EBNA is Epstein-Barr virus nuclear antigen and LMP is latent membrane protein. Clear? Now we will see the pathogenesis of Epstein-Barr virus. The main source of infection is infected salivary secretion, as in case of uh, infected salivary secretion. And the predominant mode of transmission is through intimate oral contact, as in your kissing, etc. steps. And the receptors of Epstein-Barr virus are CD21 or CR2. This is especially, these receptors are present on B cell, and they are also present on the epithelial cells of the pharynx. Okay, this receptor is also a receptor for C3b component of complement pathway. Clear? And the primary infection of Epstein-Barr virus occurs in oropharynx. Okay, so since these receptors are present on the epithelial cells of the pharynx, so the primary infection occurs in pharynx. Okay, after the primary infection, that is our B cell gets infected. After this virus entry into the B cell, they undergo latency period without even completing their replication, because they entered, they start, they caused the primary infection, the oropharynx, and they gone for latency. Okay, um, following which the after the latency, if you see, most of the infected B cells have been destroyed, but only some of the B cells will remain or persist for lifelong. Okay, and these virus affected oropharynx, and after some time it can also go and affect the other parts of the body after reactivation. Okay, and here in this Epstein-Barr virus procedure, the cellular immunity is most important when compared to humoral immunity in controlling your Epstein-Barr virus infection. Why I am saying is that if your T cell immunity has been decreased, this infected B cell will go on proliferating and they lead to lymphoma. So our T cell is our controller for this cancer. Okay, and viral shedding, as usual, occurs in the oropharyngeal sites, and it serves as a source of infection. In children, these symptoms are very subclinical, that is mild, whereas adults only will undergo acute infectious mononucleosis. And what happens to the infected B cells is that they get immortalized, okay, by the virus, and they start synthesizing more immunoglobulins, that too mainly autoantibodies. So they synthesize more autoantibodies. Example you can say is heterophile antibodies to cheap RBC antigens. Okay, and in response to this, it stimulates the CD8 T lymphocytes, and these lymphocytes will appear atypical. What are these atypical lymphocytes? Is that the lymphocytes will be larger and they will have more cytoplasm. Clear? Now we will see a picture. See the primary infection in the epithelial cells of the pharynx. Okay, Epstein-Barr virus entry into the B cell, because here only our receptor CD21 or CR2 is present. Viral entry or replication promotes growth transformation of B cell, the blasting B cell. The priming of naive T cell promotes EBV specific response, undergoes latency. This is a latent infection, resting B cell, after which reactivation occurs and the viral shedding occurs in the oropharyngeal. Okay, and remaining thing will undergo lysis, and again this process continues. Okay, so this is the primary infection and the persistent infection. Okay, then this is also a picture depicting the same pathogenesis. Okay, in saliva, Epstein-Barr virus enters, that is the source, and after that it enters the oropharynx. Okay, it infects the B cell. B cell undergoes latency. Okay, after latency they'll have this early antigens, right? I mean latent phase antigens, that is EBNA and LMP. Okay, and to demonstrate this only this picture. Okay, and again the same process which we saw in the last picture. Okay, so EBNA and LMP, they are latent phase antigens, remember. Okay, now coming to the clinical manifestations, the mostly in children and in infants, the symptoms will be asymptomatic. Okay, whereas adolescent age groups only will have this infectious mononucleosis. And the incubation period of infectious mononucleosis is 4 to 8 weeks. Okay. The most common symptom is sore throat, and the most common sign is lymphadenopathy. And infectious mononucleosis patients are characterized by fever, malaise, splenomegaly, hepatitis, as well as atypical lymphocytes. Okay. So this is a picture depicting very clearly incubation period 4 to 8 weeks. Okay, causing glandular fever, sore throat, anorexia, lethargy, lymphadenopathy, splenomegaly, hepatitis, causing uncommon late tumors. Okay, EBV infection affecting the oropharyngeal epithelium, virus shedding in saliva continues often for months after recovery, causing nasopharyngeal carcinoma in Southeast Asia. And EBV infection occurring in local B cells, because this EBV receptors are present on both oropharynx as well as in local B cells. If it enters local B cells, okay, it will be spreading via blood and it enters liver, lymph nodes, and spleen. Here, the more B cells get infected, okay, most of. So either they'll have restricted infection, that is no lysis can occur. So EBV DNA becomes latent in circulating B cells, causing reactivation. Example in post-renal transplant. Because of the more B cells infected, polyclonal activation occurs, raised Ig levels. Okay, that is immunoglobulin levels. As well as another thing is that immortalization, that is indefinite B cell proliferation. Because of this, lymphoma in immunocompromised can occur. Burkitt's lymphoma in Africa can occur. And see here the immune response T cells, okay, or antibodies, immunopathology and symptoms, but they destroy infected B cells, gradually clearing the infection. That's why I said cellular immunity is very important. If the cellular immunity gets decreased, our B cells will proliferate and lead to lymphoma. Clear? Now coming to the lab diagnosis. Through blood examination, we can find out. Initially, we can find leukopenia, but gradually, if you see, there will be increase in the total leukocyte count. After which, you can see lymphocytosis with greater than 10% atypical lymphocytes. Okay. As I said, atypical lymphocytes are nothing but they will be large with more cytoplasm. And the next examination is through serology we can do, under which Paul Bunel test and differential agglutination test can occur. So the Paul Bunel test, this is nothing but a heterophile agglutination test or heterophile antibody test. Okay, this is a standard diagnostic procedure and it uses sheep RBCs to detect the heterophile antibodies in patient serum. Okay, what will be the procedure is that they'll serial dilutions of inactivated patient serum is mixed with equal volumes of 1% sheep RBCs. Okay, and then they will be incubating. Okay, the result, if you see the agglutination titer of 100 or above, it is suggestive of infectious mononucleosis. However, false positive cases can also occur. Why? Because these heterophile antibodies are non-specific. They may be even present after serum therapy, or even in normal conditions also they can be present. Hence, a confirmation test is very required for these cases. So the confirmation test can be done with the help of differential agglutination test. This test is specific for confirmation. Okay, for confirmation. Here what they will do is that the patient serum is first treated with guinea pig kidney cells and ox red cells. Okay, following which Paul Bunel test is repeated again. As you see here, in case of infectious mononucleosis, Paul Bunel test performed first will be positive, treated with guinea pig cells not absorbed, treated with ox red cells absorbed. When repeated, serum prior treated with guinea pig kidney cells, the test is positive. Serum prior treated with ox red cells is negative. Okay, so this test is replaced by a simple slide agglutination test that you call it as monospot test. This test employs horse RBCs instead of sheep RBCs with the same sensitivity and specificity. Okay, so Paul Bunnell test, differential agglutination test, these monospot tests, these tests and all will detect the non-specific antibodies. Whereas to detect the specific EBV antibody, we can detect through immunofluorescence and ELISA. Okay, here what happens is that the IgM anti-BCA antibody. What is this BCA? BCA is viral capsid antigen. Okay, against this antigen, IgM antibody occurs. This will give you a clear cut that it is a primary infection. So IgM will detect and tell you it is a primary infection, and it soon after disappears after about 1 to 2 weeks. Okay, whereas the IgG anti-VCA antibody, this will appear or persist lifelong. Okay, and it identifies it as a past infection, or it indicates it is a recent infection or past infection. Okay, anti-EBNA antibody, it is a new appearance of antibody to the EBNA antigen. It is also a useful marker for primary infection, as well as the antibodies to early antigens. Early antigens, remember, they are non-structural proteins. So the antibodies to those are present in high titer in EBV associated lymphomas. Clear? However, the Paul Bunnell test will detect the antibody. They will show the antibody too early. Okay, in the case of infectious mononucleosis, and it will disappear within 2 months. Clear? This is about the lab diagnosis. Now, coming to the treatment and prevention, the supportive measures such as analgesics are given in the case of infectious mononucleosis. Acyclovir therapy is given to treat the case of oral hairy leukoplakia, though relapse is common. Relapse in the sense they'll come to the same situation, that is பழைய நிலைக்கே திரும்பி போயிடுவாங்க even when given acyclovir. Okay, so acyclovir can treat, but it also left to the same case itself. And the prevention isolation is not of use, because the temporary contact does not transmit any infection in this case, and up to date no vaccine has been developed against Epstein-Barr virus. Now, coming to a case study, a 16-year-old girl presented with a complaint of malaise and loss of appetite for the previous month, and sore throat and fever of 40 degrees Celsius, that is 104 degree Fahrenheit, with a rise in temperature, especially in the afternoon for the previous 5 days. On examination, cervical lymphadenopathy and mild hepatosplenomegaly were detected. In the complete blood counts, she was found to have absolute mononuclear lymphocytosis, with most of the lymphocytes being atypical. Note it. Her serum tested positive for the Paul Bunnell test, and her IgM was also positive for EBNA. This IgM, as I said, it indicates it is a primary infection. Okay, and the patient improved on supportive care. This is a case depicting the Epstein-Barr virus infection. Now, the questions covered in this video include: describe the pathogenesis and lab diagnosis of Epstein-Barr virus, infectious mononucleosis, and Paul Bunnell test. Bye guys, and we'll see the next DNA virus of herpes viridae family in my next video. Okay, bye, take care, and thank you.